Clubs have some big decisions to make in the summer transfer window, so today I'll be looking at 10 players who need a decision made on their future as their contract expires in 2022. First off, and it's Leon Goretzka. Now, you'd think that this one would be rather straightforward. I mean, the Bayern Munich midfielder is playing at the top of German football. He's constantly in the German national team, and he does a pretty good job at that. But with his contract expiring in 1 year, just over 1 year, there are a few questions as to whether or not he will sign a new deal. Basically, because Bayern Munich feel he's worthy enough to be included as a swap deal somewhere else. There were a few rumours quite a few months ago that he'd be moving to Juventus and Bentancur would come as a replacement, but personally, I don't really see this one happening. If I had to put any money on it, I think that Goretzka and Bayern Munich would definitely come to a deal and he'd sign an extension on his current deal. The main reason actually being is that I don't think Bayern Munich really have too many backups. In midfield, they've obviously got Joshua Kimmich and Leon Goretzka, but they sold Thiago last summer. Looks like Corentin Tolisso could be on his way out after suffering quite a numerous amount of injuries, and aside from that, there aren't too many other players for Bayern, so I think Goretzka's going to be signing a new deal. Into number 9, and one that is probably going to be leaving this summer purely because Rennes could get a hell of a lot of money for him, and that is Eduardo Kamavinga. The French youngster, since bursting onto the scene at 16-year-old, has been unbelievable, so much so that Zinedine Zidane reportedly wants him at Real Madrid. They kept him for the previous season because, well, they got into the Champions League places, and that is obviously where a brilliant young midfielder deserves to be playing. Since then, though, he hasn't signed a new deal. With it running out next summer, there's no way they can lose such an unbelievable talent for free. So unless they manage to tie him down to a new deal, which I think looks a little bit unlikely, they're gonna have to sell him this summer. For a club the size of Rennes, to be honest, even though 50 to 60 million for a young midfielder with his potential may seem like a little bit on the cheap side for them, that's still a ridiculous amount of money that can keep the club going for quite some time. As to where he'll end up, we're not quite sure yet, but certainly Real Madrid look to be near the top of that list. The next one coming up in at number 8 is Paulo Dybala, and for some reason I just don't understand why Juventus aren't so willing to commit to him. Maybe it's because of Cristiano Ronaldo, maybe it's because they don't quite find a place for Paulo Dybala to fit in, but he's just never really seemed at home, especially in the last few seasons where every single transfer window that's come and gone, he's been linked with another move. He was linked with a move to Spurs so much that apparently he'd already said goodbye to his teammates ahead of a move to North London, but it didn't quite work out. As for his future, Juventus need to make a decision. Now, for me, they either give him a new contract and promise him that he'll be the future of Juventus, he'll be the one they build the team around, or they go in the opposite direction and they back Cristiano Ronaldo. In fact, Ronaldo is number 7 on this list, and they do need to make a decision. The reason being that Cristiano Ronaldo, whether he leaves this summer or whether he stays one more season at Juventus, which at the moment I think is quite unlikely, he's going to be leaving in the summer of 2022. But there's no way they're going to sign him down to another deal. By the age of 37, he'll be leaving the club. Maybe he'll go to the MLS. Maybe he'll decide he's got one more European stint in him. Back at Real, back at United, a new challenge at PSG, who knows? But like I mentioned before, Juve really need to make the decision. If they stick with Ronaldo, they're going to be paying his extraordinary wage, but they could get rid of Paulo Dybala, either in a swap deal, which would be good for bringing another player, especially when they don't have too much money to spend, or they could just get rid of him altogether and make a good 60, 70 million from him. On the flip side of this, they could get rid of Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, around 30 million is the price that's being quoted for getting rid of him, plus offloading all his wages, and they'll be able to give Paulo Dybala the squad role that he wants. It's just whether or not they think he can fulfill it. And honestly, if you're going to get rid of Cristiano Ronaldo, not replacing him seems like a pretty unwise move. Moving on to number 6, and this is a tough one. It's one that's going to ramble on for quite some time. It's Paul Pogba. He's doing great at Manchester United, and then he's doing poorly. He's doing great with the French team, and then he's doing terribly. He just cannot keep a consistent form, but when he does, and I've remained and will continue to say this throughout this whole period, when Paul Pogba's on form, and when he's looking good in the Manchester United and French midfield, he is one of, if not the most talented midfielders in the world. Some of the stuff he can do is what no other player can do on the ball. It's for this reason I think that Manchester United should give him a new contract if they're to be moving forward. If United want to be challenging the top of the Premier League, challenging in the Champions League, back to having the best players in their position in the world on the pitch for them, they need to keep Paul Pogba. For me, a contract extension and the sale of a few other midfielders may actually help. This whole Fred and McTominay, this McFred dual partnership in midfield doesn't necessarily seem to be providing them with enough both defensively and offensively. When they look good going forward, they look suspect at the back, and when those two are in a midfield pivot, they may be able to cover defensively but don't really offer much else going forward. Ideally for me, in a Manchester United midfield, they get rid of those two. They bring in a brilliant defensive midfielder, have Pogba a little bit further forward, creating that link with Bruno Fernandes, and that is the ideal midfield three. Next up at number 5 of players whose contracts are running out in 2022, the decision needs to be made around Marcel Sabitzer. So much has been spoken of about the Austrian midfielder around RB Leipzig, and what a brilliant job he has done with the club. He's been there for 7 years. He's been a massive part of this project, but it looks as though he may be on the move. With his contract running out, I don't think he's going to be signing a new deal at the club, which means that inevitably they're going to be forced to sell him this summer because they want to at least make a bit of money. Around 40 million is the amount that could see him move on, and Tottenham are one of those set to be interested, though Manchester United, like I mentioned before, are also probably in the market for a new midfielder. The thing is with Leipzig is that Julian Nagelsmann has also been linked with a move away from the club. Now, whether or not that happens, we don't quite know. If he does leave, though, firstly, he could take Sabitzer with him. I mean, he's been such an important part of his team for the last 2 years. Why not take with one of your best players? And secondly, if he leaves and then Sabitzer decides to leave, you can kind of see a bit of an exodus at the club, especially with the likes of Dayot Upamecano and Ibrahima Konate also potentially leaving the club in the future as well. It's not a complete dismantling of the Leipzig squad, but certainly if they're going to do this, they'll create a load of money and they'll be able to rebuild. A big decision certainly for the club this summer. Next up, and it's actually one on this list who I think is a must keep, and it's Raphael Varane. There's been loads of talk about Sergio Ramos leaving the club, and it doesn't look like anyone's making any real headway into signing David Alaba. So for Real, they must keep one of the best defenders they've ever had and a guy who is in his prime. Now, of course, like with everyone else on this list, because that's the nature of the video, the fact that his contract runs out next summer means that if he doesn't want to sign a new deal, they may have to let him go for a little bit less money, but that just really wouldn't be worth it. There is no amount of money that's worth selling Raphael Varane for, especially when your other defender Ramos could be leaving the club as well. If I were Real, I'd bring out the checkbook and do whatever I could to keep Varane at the club for as long as possible. Moving into number 3, and this is a rather interesting one, and a team that we've spoken about a lot recently when it comes to transfers, and it's Barcelona. Ousmane Dembele looks to be back on form. He's back in the Barcelona team doing bits, he's back in the France team finding the back of the net, and he's showing a lot of the promise which Barcelona originally thought they were buying when they spent so much money on him. The problem is at the moment that he's also one of the guys in their squad who would bring in a lot of money were they to sell him this summer. United and a few other teams have been interested in him in that right wing position, and they are, Barcelona, well within their rights to probably charge around 80 to 90 million for the French winger. This would obviously bring a lot of money, and what it would also do is allow them to put money into the future of the club, and in particular one other wide player possibly vying for Ousmane Dembele's position. Of course, he is a big deal at the club and they probably will want to keep him and keep this other player as well, but maybe they could be tempted should a big enough deal come in. And the second player on this list is Ansu Fati, an absolute gem, potentially the head of a new golden generation for Barcelona and their youth team, and if they got a lot more money, it's something that they can offer him. Apparently quite a few clubs were interested in him when he was 17 years old, even offering up to 60 million for the Barcelona youth product. In fact, he's done so well at such a young age, it's pretty amazing that Barcelona have left it to the point where they've got just, about 20 months left until his contract expires. Surely this can't be happening. I mean, I know there's a lot for the new president to do at Barcelona. There's a lot of tasks on his to-do list, one of them being the likes of Erling Haaland. But having said that, Fatu has surely got to be a priority, along with the likes of Messi and obviously Ousmane Dembele as well. In a perfect world, Barcelona keep both of them, but they're going to have to commit to some rather hefty contracts, something which they're trying to do the opposite of with all of their debt at the moment. And lastly but not least, number 1, the team that really need to sort out the future of this player. It's PSG and Kylian Mbappe. And before you ask, the reason why Neymar isn't on this list is because he is this close to signing a new deal at the club. It's clear he's happy in Paris. He probably won't get the money that he wants moving to Barcelona. And, well, as I mentioned before, he's doing pretty good at the club. One of the positives about him signing for the club is that potentially they could convince Kylian Mbappe to do the same, although I don't think it's going to happen. The French striker has literally won absolutely everything possible at the club apart from the Champions League. But obviously, moving to another team in Europe, he'd still have a chance at winning the Champions League. in PSG and in Liga. He's literally done everything, and apart from this relationship with Neymar, which could tempt him to stay, there's not really much else tying him down to the club. At the moment, PSG unfortunately are playing in a transfer window of their own, where they've got the ridiculous money to pay insane fees for players, but no one else really has that amount to pay for those players again. Like, they paid, I think after the loan from Monaco, around 170 to 180 million euros for Mbappe. They're not getting that money back. That's the end of the conversation. Nobody's paying 180 million for him. I think that's why Neymar's not leaving as well. So they're going to have to accept a little bit less money just because no one else has that. And on top of this, they'll have to accept even more less money, if that makes sense, because his contract is running out next summer, and you cannot lose Kylian Mbappe on a free transfer. That is a crime of the footballing century if they allow that to happen, which they won't. So either they shell big bucks out for a new contract, which I think they will because they want to sell him for a proper price, or they sell him for a reduced fee, most likely to Real Madrid in the summer. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of money to be swapping hands. I don't think it's going to happen, and they're going to do all they can to renew his contract, probably with a promise in there that they do let him go eventually. So there you have it, 10 players whose contracts expire next summer, and what I think the club should be doing with their transfer business. You guys let me know your thoughts down below though. Check out everything else we've got going on, and until next time, I will see you guys later.